Kahalo Yahweh, Bahoshem, Yahweh Shai, Bahoshem Rakaha Kodash. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, where I have learned this truth, and where I am still learning this truth. And also Shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I am of that number. All right, this video is going to be a reading of 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. But this video is going to be a reading in the Good News translation. All right, we're going to put this thing under the scope. All right, because it is not if the truth holds up to the translation. It is if the translation holds up to the truth. All right, we already did the NLT reading and the King James reading. All right, and the NLT held up pretty well. Okay, they use certain words that could throw you off if you do not have a foundation. Okay, that's why it is important to these days being the information age, to search these things out. Okay, so that you will be able to rightly divide the word of truth through the spirit of Yahweh and Yahweh Shai on down to their men. Okay, this is a very important time. All right, as all parts of time were important, but you can see why this is called the information age. All right, they are busy changing things. Okay, while people are searching for things, and while also they are distracting you while making these changes. All right, so you can rightly divide the word of truth. This Bible is not a fairy tale. Okay, it's not just a storybook. This is real life, and it is actual history. It is our history. Okay. So again, this is a reading of 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, because we are in the midst of doing a series titled Yahweh Shai, Obedience and the Resurrection on this channel. Okay, and 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, among other books in the Bible, are being touched on and referenced to. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to this, but beforehand, let's touch on where this was mentioned. 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. All right, let's start in 1 Corinthians 15 and 22. All right, 1 Corinthians 15 and 22. This will be read out of the Good News translation also. Okay. 1 Corinthians 15 and verse 22. It reads, "For just as all people die because of their union with Adam, in the same way all will be raised to life because of their union with the Messiah. But each one will be raised in proper order. The Messiah first of all, then, at the time of his coming, those who belong to him. Then the end will come. The Messiah will overcome all spiritual rulers, authorities, and powers, and will hand over the kingdom of God to the Father." All right, not that the Father is not ruling everything. All right, this is the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, putting things all back in order. Okay. All right, verse 25, it reads, "For the Messiah must rule until God defeats all enemies and puts them under his feet. The last enemy to be defeated will be death." All right, so the whole chapter of 1 Corinthians 15 spoke of the resurrection of the dead. Okay, 1 Corinthians 15 and 35 in the Good News reads, "Some will ask, how can the dead be raised to life? what kind of body will they have? Okay, so now if you go to 1 John 2 and 3, it answers this. 1 John, uh, 1 John chapter, or 1 John chapter 2, verses, or excuse me, starting at verse 2. All right, it reads, First John chapter 3, excuse me. 1 John 3, starting at verse 2. It reads, my dear friends, in the good news, all right? It reads, my dear friends, we are now God's children, but it is not yet clear what we shall become. But we know that when the Messiah appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he really is. Everyone who has this hope in the Messiah keeps himself pure, just as the Messiah is pure. Okay, so back in 1 Corinthians 15, all right, and now verse 36. It reads, you fool. I'll start at 35 again. Someone will ask, how can the dead be raised to life? What kind of body will they have? 36 reads, you fool. When you plant a seed in the ground, it does not sprout to life unless it dies. All right. And what you plant is a bare seed. Perhaps a grain of wheat or some other grain, not the full-bodied plant that will later grow up. All right. So what we just spoke of is called the germination process. All right. A seed is planted, the seed dies, and then life sprouts. Scripture talks of after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life would enter into the elect, which is the 350-year period that we had no understanding. Okay, so let's keep reading 1 Corinthians, or actually let's go jump to 1 Corinthians 42 now. All right, it reads, this is how it will be when the dead are raised to life. When the body is buried, it is mortal. When raised, it will be immortal. When buried, it is ugly and weak. When raised, it will be beautiful and strong. When buried, it is a physical body. When raised, it will be a spiritual body. There is, of course, a physical body, so there has to be a spiritual body. All right? So 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, speaks of how we have our heavenly body and our groanings to get back to that state so that we can receive the fullness of our blessing and inheritance as the sons of the Most High. All right, so let's go to 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter. Let's get this read. All right, 2 Corinthians chapter 5 in the Good News translation. All right, it reads, for we know that when this tent we live in, our body here on earth, is torn down, God will have a house in heaven for us to live in, a home he himself has made, which will last forever. And now we sigh. So great is our desire that our home, which comes from heaven, should be put on over us. By being clothed with it, we shall not be without a body. All right. Verse 4. While we live in this earthly tent, we groan with a feeling of oppression. It is not that we want to get rid of our earthly body, but that we want to have the heavenly one put on over us, so that what is mortal will be transformed by life. God is the one who has prepared us for this change, and he gave us his spirit as the guarantee of all that he has in store for us. So we are always full of courage. We know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord's home. For our life is a matter of faith, not sight. We are full of courage and would much prefer to leave our home in the body and be at home with the Lord. More than anything else, however, we want to please him, whether in our home here on earth. All right. All right. Again, verse 9. More than anything else, however, we want to please him, whether in our home here or there. Excuse me, that was where I messed up. All right, verse 10. For all of us must appear before the Messiah to be judged by him. We will each receive what we deserve according to everything we have done, good or bad, in our bodily life. All right, verse 11, the heading above verse 11 of 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, in the Good News Translation reads, Friendship with God through the Messiah. All right, verse 11, it reads, we know what it means to fear the Lord, and so we try to persuade others. God knows us completely, and I hope that in your hearts you know me as well. We are not trying again to recommend ourselves to you. Rather, we are trying to give you a good reason to be proud of us, so that you will be able to answer those who boast about people's appearance and not about their character. Are we really insane? It is for God's sake. Or are we sane? Then it is for your sake. We are ruled by the love of the Messiah. Now that we recognize that one man died for everyone, which means that they all share in his death. He died for all, so that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but only for him who died and was raised to life for their sake. Verse 16. No longer then do we judge anyone by human standards. Even if at one time we judged the Messiah according to human standards, we no longer do so. Anyone who is joined to the Messiah is a new being. The old is gone, the new has come. All this is done by God who, through the Messiah, changed us from enemies into his friends and gave us the task of making others his friends also. Our message is that God was making all human beings, which, there we go, his friends through the Messiah. And it's not all human beings. All right. All right. It's not the whole world in the oikoumene sense. It is the world in the cosmos sense. And more specifically, the remnant and the elect. All right. Anyway, it reads, God did not keep an account of their sins, and he has given us the message which tells how he makes them his friends. Here we are, then, speaking for the Messiah, as though God himself were making his appeal through us. We plead on the Messiah's behalf. Let God change you from enemies into his friends. The Messiah was without sin, but for our sake, God made him share our sin in order that in union with him, we might share the righteousness of God. All right. And that was 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, in the Good News Translation. And it kind of tried to throw us off there when it spoke of all human beings becoming friends through the Messiah. All right, we know that that's not the case. It is not every single human being. It is a specific gene line, a specific kindred. Okay, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Okay, all right. And then there was something else that they put that I see that they were trying to be funny on, but I can't remember exactly what it was. All right, this is why it is important to get your foundation. All right, again, it is not if the truth holds up to the translation, it is if the translation holds up to the truth. All these things are sifting mechanisms of the Lord and stumbling blocks. He's steadily filtering out whom are his. Okay? So with that, call halal Yahweh, Baal Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Baal Hashem, Rakaha Kodash. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth. And also shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I'm of that number. And Lord willing, we'll see you in the next video. Shalom.